Hi there. It's time to do some spring cleanup. It's the very end of March. We've had several weeks with off and on higher temperatures, nicer weather. Still some nights that are getting down in the lower 30s, but it's just a glorious day today to get out. So I am in my play clothes. I've got my buggy. Let me show you. I've got my buggy all set. I've got some of my amendments, some fertilizers, also some things like soil acidifier I have a few hydrangeas that if I get the soil a little more acid than what is typical in my area, we tend to be a little more on the alkaline end. So there are certain hydrangeas that your blossoms will be more of a pink color when you have a more alkaline type of soil than acid loving. So those hydrangeas, if you give them a little acid, they will be more of a blue color. I personally like to give them enough of the soil acidifier to start them off kind of on the blue end of the scale, but then as the summer comes along, that starts to diminish a little bit in the soil. I actually love it when they get kind of this like purpley blurpley color as the soil is becoming a little more alkaline. The blossoms transition to closer to pink, but because there's still some of this in there, it keeps them a little bit blue, and it comes out this really pretty shade that's somewhere between blue and pink. So some of the things will be getting that. Also a little bit of iron with those shrubs. My garlic that's already in the garden is going to get some blood meal to give it a nice boost of nitrogen as it's working on growing its leaves and the plant itself. A little later, I'll start also giving it some bone meal to help with the development of the actual bulbs, but that won't be for several weeks yet. I've got a little bit of tree fertilizer left, so all the trees until this runs out, we'll get a little bit of that. The hydrangeas will also get a fertilizer that's a little more specifically for plants that are in like that family. Although honestly, with the Espoma brand, you can kind of use, if you run out of something, you can kind of use whatever you have. I am going to go pick up today some more of just their basic fertilizer that's good for anything that's not specifically formulated with a little extra of one thing or the other, called Garden Tone. Sorry, not Garden Tone, that's more for vegetables. The one called Plant Tone. And that's what I'll be endeavoring to give, kind of everything that doesn't maybe have a specific need for something a little different, but really honestly they're all very, very similar. You could use any of them on pretty much anything. I also have my berry tone here, so I'll give my strawberry plants an extra little boost of that. I already gave them a little bit a few weeks ago, but now that they're actually starting to really green up, I want to give them a little extra. So I've got my kangaroo bag, and I've got my big loppers for the few places where I've got some perennial grasses. I've got my pruners and a pair of gloves. And so we're just going to go around and see what we can get cleaned up. I know people talk about this time of year waiting still to clean things up too much because there could be pollinators that are hibernating in stalks and things and branches. I love the pollinators. I plant a lot of things for the pollinators. I've got a lot of my daffodils that have already started blooming. Here, let me show you. So as you can see here, we do have some daffodils that have already started to bloom. Trees are getting some leaves. So I will be very careful about anything that I clean up that is potentially someplace that a pollinator could be maybe hibernating in the stalks. I'm not going to be burning. I'm not going to crush it up. I'm just going to kind of gather it up and gently place it out in the woods where it can decompose. And if there is a pollinator that happens to be in there, hopefully it will be a gentle enough relocation that plant that insect will still be okay. So out and start working on this. I'll try to video a little bit of it if there are things that I think might be helpful to know. So basically I'm just going to try to clean up what I can today and also try to get rid of things that there's some weeds popping up already. So I'll see you in a bit. I just want to show you how easy it is to do this when you do wait till this time of year. You can see the plant is completely dried out. The seed head has mostly lost its seeds. Either birds have come and eaten them, or they've just fallen off, and maybe we'll get more of these plants. You can see if you just reach down and kind of give it a little wiggle, maybe bend it, it'll usually just pop right off like that. And then I'm just gently sticking it in my kangaroo bag. And if I have any that won't just pop off, that's where I'll use my pruners. Give it a little snip. But you can see those just let loose, came right off into the kangaroo bag, which, by the way, this is from Fiskars. I don't get anything. I don't get anything from them, but I just love this bag. I've used it hard for the past several years. It's got a hard shell bottom. It folds up for storage. It's great. I love it. It will hold a lot before I have to go dump it in the woods. So basically, for things like coneflowers, you would also probably be able to clean up things like coreopsis. A lot of perennials, like this is a coreopsis, that have these plants with like the stalks that the flowers and leaves were on. Having sat out all winter, it's going to just release from the base of the plant. You can see we've got some new growth coming in here. So it's a pretty easy cleanup. And like I said, if you do have a stalk or two that's a little more stubborn, just use your pruning snips and snip it off. So I'm going to keep going. And I'm also trying to get some of these weeds that have popped up as well as I'm doing this. So until I find something else to share with you, I'll see you in a little bit. Got my other two favorite tools for these types of jobs. This one is also from Fiskars. It's a little, I don't even know what it's called. I got it off Amazon, but it's like a little leaf rake. So these are plastic. They're very flexible. But boy, have I put this through its paces the last few years. It is great because you can kind of comb over areas where you've trimmed things off, or you've got a bunch of leaves still sitting left over from fall, and it does not tend to hurt your plants. It's gentle enough not to rip your plants out of the ground, but it moves the stuff away that's loose. And then this, if I have to get down on my knees, this is a kneeling pad from Garden Answer. Oh my goodness, it's awesome. This is a really thick, it's soft but firm enough that your knees just don't go straight through to the ground. So Garden Answer, they have these on their website, in their store, and they have different colors. They also have a smaller one if you have, I don't know, like maybe a really tight space and you just need a little something for just right where your knees would be. But I really like this. I really appreciate it. And it's a pretty reasonable price, if I recall, something in the $20-something range. And they do oftentimes do things where you can get things on a little bit of a discount. So highly recommend. All right, let's talk about things like catmint or lavender. So catmint and lavender, I tried to get around. There are certain things in the fall and get those kind of cut back because they can get so big through the summer. And I didn't want them, I just wanted them a little bit smaller for the winter time. But I didn't get all of them. And here you can see, this is a catmint, and you can see that there's some new growth coming through. So basically, hang on. Okay, so I moved over here where we've got a lavender and a catmint close to each other. So basically, you can see that there's new growth coming in here with the catmint, and you just want to snip off the stuff that looks dead, because it is, and you want to get that away from the new growth so that the plant is not covered up in that, suffocated, and just to basically liberate the new stuff coming in. And that will fill out nicely here over the next few weeks. All right, now lavender. Lavender, you have to be a bit more cautious. You want to not get too deep where it's gotten a woody stem. I tried to do what Laura from Garden Answer, she talks about with her lavender. She just prunes it kind of almost to the ground every year so that it doesn't have a chance to develop a woody stem. I don't think I got to that quick enough with this one. So you can see that there is definitely down towards the base where it looks like wood. So I would not cut down that deep. And I think I did trim this up some, but this, I'm just gonna kind of clean it up a little. And so the bits that are real long and scraggly, I'm just gonna give them a little trim. I'm gonna get the dried leaves away from it as best I can. It has not really started to green up yet. I'm looking in here, trying to look down towards the base. This is some lavender that I grew from seed. Sorry about that. So this is some lavender that I grew from seed, and you can see it took really well, but I don't think it has started to green up yet. So I don't want to mess with it too much. I just want to get leaves out of the way so that it has some air flow. And I'm going to take off these ends that look extra scraggly, and then we'll check it again once it starts to green up. And that's all we're going to do for that. The next thing I'm going to try tackling are my hydrangeas. They all need, let me start that over again. A lot of the ones that I have do need a spring prune. These are a variety called Little Limes. They're a kind of a smaller version of a limelight. They're not small necessarily. They are probably, mine have been averaging about, I don't know, 5 feet tall, maybe 4 feet wide. You can see I left the bloom clusters on them over the winter. It adds some nice winter interest. It was something a little more interesting to look at than just bare branches. When they were covered with snow, it was kind of pretty. Plus, these do retain some color deep into the fall. So, like I said, and they still, even now, they have an interesting structure, an interesting texture, but it's time to get them off. And so these, as well as the limelight hydrangeas, which are kind of a larger version, similar, you can see them along the side of the house here. They are much taller. Those are probably approaching 7 or 8 feet tall, and obviously also wider. So what you want to do with that type of hydrangea, it's a panicle hydrangea. They bloom on what's called new wood, meaning new growth this year, is take them back about a third, so to about here. And then the other thing you want to look for are just really spindly, skimpy looking branches, kind of like these. You can see that they held these bloom clusters up pretty well, but I tend to take anything that's on the smaller end off. And what you're going to want to do the pruning is you're looking for where you see a nice strong new bud. So that's why now is the perfect time to do it. You can see, let's see if I can get my phone in the right spot here. Okay, right here where my finger's at, that is a new branch or leaf cluster that is budding up, ready to come out. And what you want to do is when you prune, you want to get right above that and snip off the branch. So you can see, like here, this is where I probably pruned last year, and then we got 3 branches from that spot. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the branches. So like here's one that's rather spindly, kind of skinny, so I'm just going to snip that one off altogether. Here's another one that's pretty skinchy, and then here I'm going to cut it back so you can see I am, get the camera to focus right there. I cut it off right above that little bud. I probably could get a little bit closer, and there you go. So that's what you want to do, is cut right above those little buds, and then that's where new branches will come off of. So I'm going to just do that on all of these. Take it back, like I said, about a third of its size. So it's going to end up about here. And just do that for all 3 of these in this area. And then I'll do a similar thing over on the limelight. So I'll give you a peek at that before and after for both of these. And let's get this going. All right, so here's the first little lime done being pruned. You can kind of see a comparison between this one and the ones that have not been pruned. The ones that have not been pruned are blowing quite a bit in the breeze. It is breezy, as you can hear the wind chimes. Part of the reason that I prune the way I do is I take things back so that they are fairly short to where they would connect to a bigger branch if they are a little bit on the smaller side, to help give support and strength, because the blossoms, the bloom clusters can be rather large, and if they get wet in a rainstorm, rather heavy. So part of the logic of bringing things back close to a bigger, stronger branch is to give them support for when those branches, these new branches, are going to come out and have their blooms on them. So this looks pretty good. The other thing I did was anything that was kind of growing into the center, I also took those off so that as it leaves out, as it gets all its new branches, we won't have too many things kind of crisscrossing and filling up the center, which can interfere with airflow, which can contribute to sometimes diseases, funguses, if it gets too congested there in the middle. So that's the other thing that I will be doing, is taking out any branches that are kind of going into towards the center. This is the next type of hydrangea that I will be taking a little bit of pruning to today. This is a mountain serrata type of hydrangea. It is going to bloom on new and old. You can see it has started leafing out quite a bit already. So what I'm doing with these, and I have several of these here in this area, is I'm basically going to just deadhead, and then if I see any branches that appear to be dead, like those down there, I will take those off, but otherwise I'm basically going to just deadhead these guys. I don't want to take any chances of cutting off any of the blooms that it's going to have on old wood, in case we are able to enjoy those. Sometimes those get zapped if we have a late freeze, which this is Ohio. It happens. It's only the very end of March right now, so it is very possible that any of the blooms currently forming up on the old wood I could lose if we have a freeze. But in case we don't, I'm not going to cut those off. So basically these are just getting deadheaded right now. And honestly, these types of hydrangeas generally don't need a whole lot of the severe types of pruning that a panicle would benefit from. So these are getting deadheaded. I'll give you a look at these once we get them done as well. Here she is. Basically all I did was deadhead. Like I said, there were a few places where there were some branches that looked pretty dead, and so I did take it out, clean it up just a little bit, make it a little bit healthier, and she looks a lot better, like she's ready for spring. I'm going to continue to do that. I wanted to come over here and I'll show you one that is the same kind, has a little bit less that needs to be taken off, and so I thought I would see if I could. So what I'm doing is mostly taking off the blossom cluster. If it has where it looks very dead like that one did, or like here's one that looks very dead, I don't see anything popping on this one, although it is still pretty flexible. So I might leave it alone. That one I'm going to leave alone. This one feels still pretty flexible. This one is pretty low to the ground and looks very dead compared to the one next to it. You can see the color is different. There's nothing coming out on it. I'm going to go ahead and trim that one off, especially since it's so low to the ground. And then when you look where we cut it, let me get that there. when you look at that part right there, there's not really any green in there. So that probably is a dead branch. This one feels very similar. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that. You can see well, there, you can't, it's not focusing, but there's no green in there. So that's not doing the plant any good. This one looks very similar, but oh gosh, there's a bunch of green. So what I'm going to do is just take any of these branches back down to where there is green popping out and just get off the stuff that I can and just trim it back a little bit like that, so it can focus on growing that stuff that's growing. So basically anything that looks dead is coming off, although I am being careful because there are some like this that look dead, but I don't think they are because they're obviously growing new shoots. So this one is almost done. Just a little bit left here to trim up. And I think she's ready for spring. So I'm going to finish doing these and then head over to the limelights. See you in a bit. All right, all of the little limes and the mountain serratas have been pruned up or deadheaded. Remember, the serratas we just basically deadhead because they can bloom on old or new wood. So I'm trying not to take too much off of them unless it just looks really, really dead. The little limes I took back by somewhere between a third, maybe a little more than a third. Also got rid of anything that was a real skinny, spindly, flippy floppy kind of branch. You can see there's some still sitting over on the ground here. So I'm gonna get my rake to help get in underneath there and pull these out of the way, because then what I'm going to be doing, oh, those look like some roots maybe. It's definitely a mulching year. All right, so that'll be happening a little bit later after all this cleanup gets done. But for today, the only other thing that's going to happen is I'm going to kick some dirt over those roots, and then I'm going to give everybody over here a little bit of fertilizing. So the little limes, and this will be the same process with the lime lights, the little limes will just get some of the holly tone, some basic fertilizer. It's a little bit differently formulated to make it be especially good for hydrangeas. The mountain serrata ones are a type that if I get the soil a little more acidic, the blooms will be more blue end of the spectrum than pink. So I'm going to give them also a little bit of the soil acidifier. And basically I know, and my recommendation is always to read your directions, but honestly the espoma in particular is such a gentle organic type that I just get my little cup here and I just sprinkle it around and do it around what's called the drip line, so kind of like the edge of where the branches are. That's essentially generally where the roots have probably reached out to, and then as it rains, which we're supposed to get a good amount of rain tomorrow, so I am not watering these in because the rain's going to do it for me tomorrow. If it was not going to rain tomorrow, I would get the hose hooked up and I would give everything a good squirt to help start that working in. So all of the mountain ones are getting a little soil acidifier. Everybody's getting some hollytone in about that same amount, and this should set them up great for this year. Now while we're here, I just want to point out some things that we are not pruning at this time of the year. One of those is forsythias. If you live in a mild or more climate like mine where you get winters and you get springs, you may see forsythias are blooming this time of year. Mine's just getting ready to really bust out. I have one over here and one on the other side of the patio. We would not prune a forsythia at this time of year it would be pruning off all the blooms. These got a real good tidy up last year, so I will take a look at them after they're done blooming this year, and I may trim up a little bit. Like you can see, this branch is very flippy floppy, so I may tidy them up a smidge this year, but they shouldn't need too much attention. They got a good cleaning up last year. Another type of shrub that you would not want to touch this time of year is Weigelia. I think that's how you say it. Some people might say it Weigelia. But that is what all of these in here are different varieties of Weigelia. They are going to be blooming in the earlier spring. You can see they are getting their leaves all ready to bust out. They have already set blooms because they are going to bloom on buds, or their buds have been developed all last summer, fall. So you would not want to prune these. These all got a big cleanup last year. So I'm hoping that this year they are looking better, a better shape. These were all relatively small, most of them, when I planted them. So some of them really had a terrible shape because they do tend to grow rather quickly, put on a lot of growth quickly, and their shape, some of them was horrendous. So they got all a really good prune last summer. And so I'll take a look at them this year again after they have bloomed, see if we need any shaping up. And then they really don't need pruned a whole lot, other than just keeping them kind of, for shape, or obviously if there are any branches that are dead. So this is a whole area that we will not be messing with until after they would have bloomed. So I'm going to fertilize these, then I'm going to go do with the limelights what I did with all of these, and then see what else I can get done before I run out of gas for today. Here are the limelights all trimmed down. I probably took these actually closer to halfway down. They're very hardy shrubs, and I think they'll be okay. In fact, last year, as an experiment on these ones here, I actually gave them an additional trim probably in about a month from now. I don't know. It was early summer, late spring. They had not actually started setting their blooms completely yet, but they had shot way up, and so I gave them an additional little trim, which I think really helped, because on these that I did that, they were way less floppy, but as you saw in the before picture, still very tall. So I think I may do that again. This one I did not give it a secondary trim, and I ended up tail end of the summer having to whack off a few branches because they were just weighed way down and way flopped over when we finally started getting rain. Last summer was a very dry summer, and it just didn't look as good, and so it's a little unbalanced right now. So that was another reason to take things back a little bit stronger, was to try to even things up. So we'll see how this goes this year. They may get one more trim a little closer to summer. Once they've put on a bunch of growth, I may bring them down again a little bit. We'll see. But these at least are done, the little limes and the mountain ones. I did get the blooms off of some other of my hydrangeas, but I didn't get all my hydrangeas finished yet, so that may be in another video. That's all we're going to get done today. Thanks for joining me here in Aunt Susan's garden.